The afternoon sun filtered through my kitchen window, casting long shadows across the granite countertop where my son's laptop sat forgotten. The house felt unusually quiet, with only the gentle hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of sprinklers watering the front lawn. I'd been cleaning up after lunch when I noticed the device still open, its screen glowing with what looked like a messaging app I didn't recognize. My name is Eleanor Wood. I'm 65 years old, and I've always prided myself on respecting my family's privacy. But something about the bright notification badges and the partial message I could see made my stomach clench with an inexplicable dread. The kitchen smelled faintly of the tuna sandwiches I'd made earlier, and I could hear the neighbor's dog barking in the distance, but all of that faded as I found myself drawn closer to that screen. This story will shock you, so make sure to like and subscribe. Drop a comment with your city name. I shouldn't have looked. I knew that even as my trembling fingers moved the cursor to minimize what appeared to be a video call window. But underneath it was a group chat, and my own name jumped out at me like a slap across the face. The conversation was between my 28-year-old son Marcus Wood and several of his friends, and as I scrolled up through their messages, each word felt like a knife twisting deeper into my chest. They were mocking everything about me, my cooking, which I'd always thought they enjoyed, my habit of asking about their days, which they called suffocating interrogations, even my choice of clothes, my laugh, the way I pronounced certain words. Marcus, my own son who I'd raised with such love and care, was leading the ridicule. He'd shared photos of me gardening in my old clothes, complete with cruel commentary about my appearance. The living room suddenly felt too warm, and I sank into my favorite armchair, the one with the floral pattern that apparently they'd also made fun of. My hands were shaking as I continued reading, discovering months of conversations where I was the constant punchline. They'd created nicknames for me that were so hurtful I couldn't bear to repeat them, even to myself. I heard the front door open and Marcus's voice calling out that he was home from his job at the marketing firm downtown. My husband, Robert Wood, answered from his study, where he'd been working on his model trains, and I could hear their easy conversation drifting through the house. Robert, at 67, had always been my anchor, my steady presence through 42 years of marriage. He had no idea what I'd just discovered, and I wasn't sure how to tell him that our son viewed us both as objects of ridicule. The sound of Marcus's footsteps approaching the kitchen made me quickly close the laptop and try to compose myself. He walked in, tall and confident in his business casual clothes, his dark hair slightly mussed from the wind outside. He looked so much like Robert had at that age, and seeing him now, knowing what I knew, made my heart ache in ways I couldn't have imagined. "Hey, Mom. Thanks for letting me use your kitchen table for my video call earlier," he said casually, reaching for his laptop. "My internet at the apartment was acting up again." I managed a weak smile, wondering how he could look me in the eye after what he'd written about me. "Of course, sweetheart. How was work?" "Same old stuff," he replied, already focused on packing up his things. "I'm meeting some friends for dinner tonight, so I'll head out in a few minutes." The friends from the group chat, I realized, the ones who knew all their private jokes about his embarrassing mother. Later that evening, after Marcus had left and Robert had settled into his recliner with the newspaper, I found myself unable to concentrate on anything. I kept replaying those messages, wondering how long this had been going on and what else they might have said that I hadn't seen. The house felt different now, tainted by this knowledge that my own son saw me as nothing more than a source of entertainment for his friends. I was still wrestling with these thoughts when my phone rang. The caller ID showed my best friend Patricia Martinez, and I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Patricia had been my neighbor for 15 years, ever since she and her late husband had moved into the house across the street. At 63, she was sharp, practical, and had always been someone I could trust with my deepest concerns. "Eleanor, you sound terrible," she said immediately after I answered. "What's wrong?" Patricia had always been able to read my moods, even over the phone. She was the kind of friend who noticed when I was struggling before I even realized it myself. We'd supported each other through everything from her husband's battle with cancer to my own mother's final years, and I knew she would understand the devastation I was feeling. "I found something today," I began, my voice barely above a whisper. "Something that's made me question everything I thought I knew about my relationship with Marcus." I told her about the group chat, about the months of cruel commentary, about feeling like a fool for not realizing how my son really saw me. Patricia listened without interrupting, occasionally making small sounds of sympathy that somehow made me feel less alone. "Oh, honey," she said when I finished. "I can't imagine how much that must hurt. But you know you need to talk to him about this, right? And to Robert, too." The thought of confronting Marcus filled me with dread, but I knew Patricia was right. I couldn't pretend I hadn't seen what I'd seen, and I couldn't continue our relationship knowing that every kindness I showed him was being turned into ammunition for his friends' amusement. But what I discovered next made the pattern snap into place. After hanging up with Patricia, I sat in the quiet living room, staring at my phone. The weight of what I'd discovered pressed down on me like a heavy blanket. Patricia was right about needing to confront Marcus, but the thought of seeing that look of annoyance cross his face when I brought it up made my stomach churn. Robert looked up from his newspaper, his reading glasses perched on the end of his nose. "Was that Patricia? How's she doing?" "She's fine," I said, then hesitated. Robert and I had been married for 32 years, and while we'd grown comfortable in our routines, we didn't always share everything anymore. But this felt too big to carry alone. "Robert, can I talk to you about something?" He folded his paper and set it aside, giving me his full attention in that patient way he'd always had. "Of course. What's on your mind?" I pulled up the group chat on my phone, my hands trembling slightly. "I found this today when I was trying to send Marcus a photo. I accidentally opened his messages." As Robert read through the conversation, I watched his expression change from confusion to understanding to something that looked like anger. His jaw tightened and he removed his glasses to rub his eyes. "Eleanor, this is..." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "This is cruel. I had no idea Marcus felt this way about you." "About us," I corrected quietly. "He mentioned your snoring, too." Robert was quiet for a long moment, processing what he'd read. "You know, I've been wondering why he seems so distant lately. Always on his phone when he's here, barely engaging in conversation. I thought it was just his age, but this... What do I do, Robert? How do I face him knowing he sees me as some kind of joke?" My husband reached over and took my hand. "We talked to him, together, because this isn't just about hurt feelings, Eleanor. This is about respect, and about the kind of person we raised him to be." The next morning, I woke up with a knot in my stomach. Marcus usually came by on Saturday mornings to do his laundry, a routine we'd established when he first moved out. Normally, I looked forward to these visits, but today, I dreaded hearing his key in the door. When he arrived around 10, carrying his laundry basket, he seemed more cheerful than usual. "Morning, Mom. Dad around?" "He's in the kitchen," I said, my voice sounding strained even to my own ears. "Marcus, when you're done starting your laundry, could you come sit with us? We need to talk." Something in my tone must have alerted him because his smile faltered. "Is everything okay? Did something happen?" "Just come find us when you're ready," I said, unable to meet his eyes. 15 minutes later, Marcus joined us at the kitchen table where Robert and I sat with my phone between us. The atmosphere was tense, and I could see Marcus picking up on it, his posture becoming more defensive. "What's going on?" he asked, settling into his usual chair. I slid the phone toward him, the group chat still open on the screen. "I saw this yesterday when I was trying to send you a photo. I opened your messages by mistake." The color drained from Marcus's face as he realized what he was looking at. He didn't even need to read it. He knew exactly what was there. For a moment, nobody spoke. "Mom, I can explain," he started, but his voice lacked conviction. "Can you?" Robert interjected, his voice firmer than I'd heard it in years. "Because what I see here is my son mocking his mother to entertain his friends. Mocking both of us, actually." Marcus ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I recognized from his childhood when he was caught doing something wrong. "It's not as bad as it looks. We were just joking around. Everyone complains about their parents sometimes." "Complaining is one thing," I said, finding my voice. "But this feels different, Marcus. This feels mean-spirited. You're sharing private moments, things I've said to you in confidence, and turning them into entertainment." He looked genuinely uncomfortable now, shifting in his chair. "I never meant for you to see it." "That's not the point," Robert said. "The point is that you wrote it at all." The kitchen fell silent, except for the gentle hum of the refrigerator. I studied my son's face, looking for some sign of the boy I'd raised, the one who used to come to me when he had nightmares, who'd once made me a Mother's Day card that said I was his best friend. "Do you really find me that embarrassing?" I asked quietly. "Am I really that much of a burden to you?" Marcus looked up then, and I saw something shift in his expression. Maybe it was the way my voice broke slightly on the word burden, or maybe it was seeing the hurt in both his parents' faces, but his defensive posture began to crumble. "No, Mom, you're not a burden. He struggled to find the words. "Sometimes it feels like you try so hard, and my friends notice everything, and I guess I thought if I made jokes about it first, it would be less awkward." "Less awkward for whom?" I asked. Before Marcus could answer, my phone buzzed with a new message. Without thinking, I glanced at it, and my heart sank even further. It was another message in the group chat, but this time it wasn't from Marcus. It was about me, and it was worse than anything I'd seen before. The message wasn't from Marcus. It was from someone named Jake, and as I read it, my stomach twisted into knots. The words were cruel in a way that went far beyond teenage complaining. This person was describing me in terms so harsh and mocking that I felt physically sick. He was commenting on my appearance, my voice, even the way I moved around my own house when Marcus's friends visited. But what made it infinitely worse was Marcus's response. A laughing emoji. Agreement. He was building on Jake's cruelty with observations of his own that cut deeper than anything I'd read in the previous messages. I must have made some sound, because both Robert and Marcus looked at me with concern. My hands were shaking as I set the phone down, and I could feel tears threatening to spill over despite my determination to stay composed. "What is it?" Robert asked, reaching for the phone. I watched his face as he read the new messages, saw his jaw tighten and his eyes flash with an anger I rarely witnessed. When he looked up at Marcus, there was a disappointment there that seemed to fill the entire kitchen. "This is unacceptable," Robert said, his voice low and controlled in the way that meant he was furious. "This goes way beyond joking around with friends." Marcus tried to lean over to see what we were reading, but I pulled the phone back. I couldn't bear the thought of him seeing me read those words about myself. Couldn't stand the idea of watching his face as he remembered writing them. The worst part wasn't even the cruelty of the words themselves. It was the realization of how long this had been going on. How many moments I'd thought were normal family interactions had actually been material for his entertainment. Every time I'd offered to make snacks for his friends, every time I'd tried to engage them in conversation, every awkward attempt at connecting with his world had been cataloged and dissected for laughs. I thought about all the times Marcus had seemed embarrassed by me, all the moments I'd attributed to normal teenage behavior. Had he been taking mental notes? Planning his next message to the group? The thought made me feel exposed and foolish in a way I'd never experienced before. "Mom?" Marcus said, and his voice sounded smaller now, younger. "I'm really sorry. I know it looks bad, but I never meant to hurt you." I looked at him then, really looked at him, and saw something that surprised me. He did look sorry. Not just caught, not just defensive, but genuinely remorseful. His eyes were wide and worried, and he kept glancing between Robert and me, as if he was only now understanding the magnitude of what he'd done. "But you did mean to hurt me?" I said quietly. "Maybe not directly, but you meant to make me a joke. You meant to take private moments and turn them into entertainment for people who don't even know me." "They do know you," he protested weakly, then immediately seemed to realize that made it worse, not better. Robert was reading through more of the messages, and I could see his expression growing darker. "Marcus, some of these messages go back months. This isn't a recent thing, is it?" The silence stretched between us, heavy with implications. I found myself remembering specific incidents now, moments when Marcus's friends had seemed to be sharing inside jokes, times when conversations had stopped abruptly when I entered a room. Had they been laughing at me all along? My phone buzzed again, and this time I couldn't bring myself to look. The idea that this conversation was continuing, that there might be more people joining in, more observations being made about our family crisis, was overwhelming. "Turn it off," I said, gesturing toward the phone. "I can't see any more right now." But as Robert reached for the phone to silence it, we all saw the preview of the new message that had just come in. It wasn't another cruel joke or mocking observation. It was something that the pattern snapped into place we thought we knew about the situation entirely. The message preview glowed on the screen, and I felt my stomach drop even further. It was from Jake, one of Marcus's closest friends, and the first few words were visible. "Dude, my mom saw the chat, and she's telling everyone's parents about..." The three of us stared at the phone in stunned silence. Robert picked it up carefully, as if it might explode, and opened the full message. "Dude, my mom saw the chat, and she's telling everyone's parents about what we've been saying. She's really mad and says we're all grounded until we apologize in person. Tyler's mom already called him crying. This is really bad." Marcus went completely pale. "Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! Oh no!" He started pacing around the kitchen, running his hands through his hair. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I never thought about other people seeing it." "I never thought about how it would make you feel if you read it." "But you thought it was okay as long as I didn't know?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. "I don't know what I was thinking," he said, and for the first time his voice cracked. "I guess I wasn't thinking at all. It just seemed like normal joking around, but seeing your face when you read those messages..." He stopped pacing and looked directly at me. "I made you feel terrible about yourself, didn't I?" The honesty in his question caught me off guard. I'd been preparing for more excuses, more justifications. "Yes, I said simply. You did. Robert was still reading through the messages, and I could see him processing the timeline. Marcus, this message here from 2 weeks ago, about your mom trying to understand your music? She spent an hour that night asking me about the bands you like because she wanted to connect with you. Marcus's face crumpled. She did what? She wanted to have something to talk to you about, Robert continued. She was worried you thought she was out of touch, so she was trying to learn about things that mattered to you. I remembered that conversation clearly. I'd felt so awkward asking Robert to explain the difference between various genres, worried that I was too old to understand what Marcus found meaningful. The irony wasn't lost on me now. And this one, Robert said, his voice getting tighter. About her making too much food for your friends. She always makes extra because she wants your friends to feel welcome here. She grew up in a house where there was never enough, so she overcompensates. Robert, stop, I said quietly. I didn't need him to defend every moment that had been turned into a joke. But Marcus was listening intently, and I could see something shifting in his expression. I didn't know that about you growing up, he said quietly. There's a lot you don't know about me, I replied. But instead of asking, you decided to make assumptions and share them with people who know even less. My phone buzzed again, another message in the group chat. This time, it was from Tyler. My mom is making me write an apology letter, and she's going to read it before I send it. She says what we did was cruel, and she's ashamed of me. Marcus read the message over my shoulder, and I heard him take a shaky breath. They're all getting in trouble because of me, because I started most of those conversations. No, I said, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. They're getting in trouble because they chose to participate. You all made choices, Marcus. Every single message was a choice. Robert set the phone down and looked at both of us. So what happens now? Where do we go from here? It was a fair question, and I realized I didn't have an answer yet. Part of me wanted to retreat, to avoid Marcus's friends forever, to stop trying to be the kind of mother who engaged with his social life. It would be easier to just step back, to keep our interactions surface level and safe. But another part of me, a part that was growing stronger as I sat there, was angry. Not just hurt, but genuinely angry that my attempts to be a good mother had been twisted into entertainment. I need to think, I said finally. This isn't something we can fix with a quick apology and then pretend it never happened. Marcus nodded, looking relieved that I wasn't demanding an immediate resolution. Can I ask you something, though? What? Do you really think I'm embarrassed by you all the time? The question hung in the air between us. I thought about all the times I'd held back from volunteering at school events, all the times I'd stayed in the car instead of walking him to the door, all the small ways I'd made myself smaller to avoid embarrassing him. I thought you were, I admitted, and maybe I was right. Before Marcus could respond, my phone buzzed one more time. But this message wasn't from one of the boys in the group chat. It was from someone whose involvement was about to make this situation infinitely more complicated. I stared at my phone, my heart sinking as I read the message. It was from Jake, another boy from Marcus's friend group, but this message wasn't sent to the group chat. It was sent directly to me. Mrs. Chen, I'm really sorry about what we said. My mom doesn't know yet, but I feel terrible. Can we please not tell her? I know what we did was wrong. The personal message felt different somehow, more real than the group dynamic that had been playing out. But it also made me realize something that made my stomach turn. Marcus, I said slowly, how many of your friends have my phone number? He shifted uncomfortably in his chair. A few of them. You gave it to us in case of emergencies when we were doing that group project last month, remember? I did remember. I'd been trying to be the helpful, involved parent, making sure all the boys could reach me if they needed rides or had questions about the assignment. Now I realized that same number had probably been used to coordinate some of their jokes about me. Did any of them ever text you about me? Robert asked Marcus, clearly thinking along the same lines. Marcus's silence was answer enough. What did they say? I asked, though part of me didn't want to know. It wasn't that bad, Marcus said weakly. Just like asking if you were going to bring those weird healthy snacks again, or if you were going to ask them about their grades. Each revelation felt like a small cut. I thought about all the times I'd carefully prepared snacks I thought teenage boys would enjoy, trying to balance nutrition with taste. I remembered asking his friends about school because I genuinely cared about how they were doing, the same way I hoped other parents cared about Marcus. So, when I was trying to get to know your friends, they were texting you to complain about it, I said, more to myself than to him. Mom, I should have told them to stop. I know that now. I didn't want to be the guy who couldn't take a joke about his mom. Robert leaned forward. But it wasn't a joke to your mom, was it? She was putting effort into getting to know the people who matter to you. I watched Marcus process this, seeing him perhaps for the first time consider my perspective, instead of just his social standing with his friends. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Jake calling. I looked at Marcus, then at Robert. Should I answer it? That's up to you, Robert said. But maybe it's time these kids started having real conversations instead of hiding behind group chats. I accepted the call, putting it on speaker so Marcus could hear. Mrs. Chen? Jake's voice was shaky. I know you probably don't want to talk to me, but I needed to call. What we did was really messed up, and I can't stop thinking about it. Marcus looked surprised by the genuine remorse in his friend's voice. I'm listening, Jake, I said. The thing is, my mom always compliments you when she sees you at school events. She says you're one of the few parents who actually tries to connect with us kids instead of just talking to other adults. And here I was making fun of you for the exact thing my mom respects about you. I felt tears prick my eyes, but I also felt something else. A small spark of validation that maybe I hadn't been as wrong as I'd thought. When Marcus reads those messages, how do you think it makes him feel? I asked Jake. There was a long pause. Probably like he has to choose between defending you and fitting in with us. That's not fair to him. Marcus was staring at the phone, and I could see something shifting in his expression. Maybe he was realizing that his friends were capable of more maturity than their group chat had suggested. Jake, I appreciate you calling, I said. But this conversation needs to happen with all of you together, not just with me. You mean like, in person? I looked at Marcus, who was watching me with something that might have been respect. I think it's time we all had an honest conversation, face to face. After I ended the call, Marcus sat quietly for a moment. You want to meet with all of them? Even after what they said? Especially after what they said, I replied. Because hiding behind screens is what got us here in the first place. Robert smiled at me. That's brave of you. It's not about being brave, I said, feeling clearer about this than I had about anything all evening. It's about showing your son that problems don't get solved by avoiding them or making jokes about them. They get solved by facing them directly. Marcus nodded slowly. When do you want to do this? Tomorrow, I said. After school? Here. What if they don't want to come? I thought about Jake's phone call, about Tyler's mother making him write an apology letter, about the genuine remorse I'd heard in Jake's voice. "I think they'll come," I said. "The question is, are you ready to have your friends see you stand up for your mother?" Marcus met my eyes, and for the first time that evening, he didn't look away. "Yeah," he said quietly, "I think I am." But as I started planning what I would say to a room full of teenage boys who had spent months mocking me, I realized I had no idea if I was ready for what tomorrow would bring. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined a room full of teenage boys staring at me, remembering every cruel joke they'd made. By morning, I was questioning everything about my plan. "You look terrible," Robert said over breakfast, not unkindly. "Thanks for the pep talk," I muttered, stirring my coffee for the 10th time. Marcus came downstairs looking almost as rough as I felt. "So, this is really happening today?" "Unless you want to back out," I said, giving him an escape route I secretly hoped he wouldn't take. He shook his head. "No, I texted them last night. They're all coming over after school." "All of them?" My stomach dropped. "How many is that exactly?" "Jake, Tyler, and Connor, plus me." Marcus grabbed a piece of toast. "Jake said Tyler's been weird all week since his mom made him write that letter. And Connor?" "Well, Connor's just scared you're going to tell his parents." "Am I going to tell his parents?" Marcus looked at me seriously. "Are you?" I realized I hadn't actually decided. Part of me wanted to call every single parent and share exactly what their precious children had been saying. But another part of me knew that would just make the boys hate me more, and Marcus would bear the brunt of it. "I don't know yet," I said honestly. Robert squeezed my shoulder. "You'll figure it out when you see them. Trust your instincts." After Marcus left for school, I spent the day cleaning the house obsessively, as if having perfect baseboards would somehow make this conversation easier. Robert found me scrubbing the kitchen counter for the 3rd time around noon. "Sarah, sit down. You're going to wear a hole in that granite." "What if this backfires?" I said, finally voicing my biggest fear. "What if they just laugh at me to my face? What if Marcus ends up more embarrassed than before?" "What if they don't?" Robert countered. "What if Jake's phone call last night was real? What if these kids are actually capable of growing up a little?" "They're teenage boys, Robert. Teenage boys who think I'm a joke." "Teenage boys who got caught. There's a difference." At 3:30, I heard Marcus's key in the door, followed by voices that made my heart race. I positioned myself in the kitchen where I could see the living room, but still felt like I had some control over the situation. "Mom?" Marcus called. "We're here." I walked into the living room and saw 4 teenage boys standing awkwardly by the couch. Jake looked genuinely nervous. Tyler was staring at his shoes. Connor looked like he wanted to bolt for the door. "Sit down," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. They arranged themselves on the couch like they were facing a firing squad. Marcus sat on the end, creating a small barrier between his friends and me. "So," I began, then stopped. I'd rehearsed this moment a dozen times, but now that I was here, all my planned speeches felt wrong. Instead, I asked, "Do you think I don't know what teenagers are like?" They exchanged glances. Tyler cleared his throat. "What do you mean?" "I mean, do you think I've never been around kids your age? Do you think I don't understand that you're going to make jokes and complain about adults?" "We weren't just complaining," Jake said quietly. "No, you weren't. You were being cruel. There's a difference between saying Marcus's mom is annoying and what you actually said." Connor finally looked up. "We didn't think you'd ever see it." "That makes it worse, not better," I said. That means you felt free to say things you'd never say to my face. But we wouldn't say them to your face, Tyler protested. Exactly my point. The room fell silent. I could see Marcus watching his friends, gauging their reactions. Here's what I want to know, I continued. Marcus has to live with this. Every time you make a joke about his embarrassing mom, he has to choose between laughing along or defending me. How is that fair to him? It's not, Jake said immediately. And every time I try to connect with you kids or show up to support Marcus, I have to wonder if you're all thinking about your next joke. How is that fair to me? This time, no one answered. I'm not asking you to like me, I said. I'm not asking you to think I'm cool, but I am asking you to consider that I'm a real person, and Marcus is caught in the middle. Connor shifted uncomfortably. So what happens now? Are you going to tell our parents? I looked at Marcus, who was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. That depends, I said, on what you're going to do differently. But before anyone could answer, my phone buzzed with a text that made everything infinitely more complicated. I glanced at my phone and felt my stomach drop. It was a text from Marcus, sent to what I now realized was a different group chat. My mom found our messages. She's making us all come over to talk about it. This is so humiliating. The responses came flooding in beneath it, and they weren't from the 3 boys sitting on my couch. These were from other kids whose names I didn't recognize, saying things like, "Rip Marcus," and "Your mom is psycho," and worse things that made my cheeks burn. I looked up at Marcus, who was staring at me with growing alarm as he watched my expression change. There's another group chat, I said quietly. The color drained from his face. Mom, I can explain? Another one? Jake asked, looking confused. You didn't tell them? I asked Marcus. About the other group where you're complaining about having to deal with this? Marcus looked like he wanted to disappear into the couch cushions. It's not like that. Then what is it like? I could feel my carefully maintained composure starting to crack. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're running to another set of friends to complain about how embarrassing it is that your psycho mom is making you face consequences. You read my other messages too? His voice was small, but there was anger underneath it. They came to my phone, Marcus. I didn't go looking for them. Tyler and Connor exchanged glances, clearly realizing they were witnessing something bigger than they'd signed up for. Maybe we should go, Connor said. No, I said, surprising myself. Actually, this is perfect. This is exactly what I'm talking about. I turned back to Marcus. Do you see what just happened? We were having a real conversation about respect and communication, and your first instinct was to run to someone else and make me the villain in a different story. Because this is embarrassing, Marcus said, his voice getting stronger. Do you know what it's like having your mom read all your private messages? Do you know how that feels? Do you know how it feels to find out your son thinks you're a joke? I shot back. The room went dead silent. Jake was staring at his hands. Tyler looked like he was holding his breath. Connor seemed to be studying the ceiling. I don't think you're a joke, Marcus said quietly. Your messages say otherwise. Those weren't even my messages. I barely said anything in that chat. I pulled out my phone and scrolled back through the screenshots I'd taken. He was right. Most of the cruel comments had come from his friends, but that didn't change the fundamental issue. You didn't stop them either, I said. You didn't say, hey, that's my mom, or that's not cool. You just let it happen. Marcus's jaw tightened. So, I'm supposed to be the weird kid who defends his mom in every group chat? You're supposed to be the kid who doesn't let people trash talk his family. It's not that simple, Why not? He gestured helplessly at his friends, then back at me. Because this is exactly what happens. Everything becomes a big deal. Everything becomes a lecture about respect and family values. Sometimes I just want to hang out with my friends without worrying about whether I'm representing the family properly. His words hit me harder than I expected. There was truth in them that I didn't want to acknowledge. I'm not asking you to represent the family, I said. But even as I said it, I wondered if that was really true. Aren't you? Marcus asked. Isn't that exactly what this is about? Jake cleared his throat. Mrs. Peterson, can I say something? I nodded, grateful for the interruption. My mom does the same thing, he said. Like, if she heard us making jokes about her, she'd probably react the same way. And I'd probably feel the same way Marcus does. That doesn't make it right, I said. No, but it makes it normal, I think. Tyler nodded slowly. My mom always says she wants to know what I'm thinking, but when I actually tell her, she gets upset. This is different, I said. I'm not upset that Marcus has private thoughts. I'm upset about the cruelty. But where's the line? Marcus asked. Like, what are we allowed to say privately that we're not allowed to say to your face? It was a fair question, and I didn't have a good answer. The truth was, I'd never really thought about it before. I'd been so focused on the hurt of discovering their messages that I hadn't considered the broader implications of what I was asking for. I don't know, I admitted. Connor looked surprised. You don't know? I mean, I know I don't want you to be cruel, but you're right that there should be space for you to process your feelings about the adults in your life. Marcus leaned forward slightly. So, what are you actually asking for? I thought about it. I guess I'm asking for you to remember that I'm a person. That when you're venting about me, you're talking about someone who loves you and is trying her best. Even when your best is annoying? Marcus asked, and there was the ghost of a smile on his face. Even when my best is annoying. And even when you do embarrassing mom things? Tyler added. Even then, Jake nodded. I think we can do that. But, Marcus said, and I could tell there was more coming, I need you to understand something too. I braced myself, not sure I was ready for whatever he was about to say. I need you to understand that sometimes you make it really hard to talk to you, Marcus said, his voice steady but serious. Like, when I try to tell you something bothered me, you either get defensive or you turn it into this whole thing about what I should be grateful for. I felt my automatic defenses rising and forced myself to stay quiet. Remember when I told you I didn't like how you introduced me to your book club friends? Marcus continued. You spent 20 minutes explaining why you were proud of me, instead of just hearing that it embarrassed me. The memory stung because it was accurate. I had done exactly that. Connor shifted uncomfortably. My dad does that too. Like, he asks what's wrong, but he's already planning his response before I finish talking. So, you're saying the group chat exists because I'm a bad listener? I asked, trying to keep the hurt out of my voice. No, Marcus said quickly. I'm saying it exists because sometimes we need to figure out how we feel before we can talk to you about it. And sometimes we just need to complain without having to solve anything. Jake nodded. It's like, when my mom makes me clean my room, and I text you guys that she's being annoying, I'm not actually asking you to fix my mom. I'm just venting. But some of those messages weren't venting, I said. Some of them were just mean. Marcus looked down at his hands. Yeah, some of them were. And I'm sorry about those ones. But Mom, You've said mean things about me too, when you're frustrated. That stopped me cold. When? Last month, when I forgot to take out the trash again? You told Dad I was becoming one of those entitled kids who thinks the world revolves around him. My stomach dropped. I had said that, in a moment of frustration, thinking Marcus was upstairs and couldn't hear. You heard that? I hear a lot of things you probably don't think I hear. Tyler looked between us. This is getting really real. Maybe it needs to, Connor said quietly. Like, maybe we all say stuff we shouldn't say sometimes. I sat back in my chair, feeling like the conversation had shifted into territory I hadn't prepared for. So, what are you suggesting? That we all just accept that we're going to be cruel to each other sometimes? No, Marcus said. I'm suggesting that maybe we could try being more honest with each other so we don't need to be cruel behind each other's backs. Honest how? Marcus took a breath. Like, I could tell you that it bothers me when you ask me about homework the second I walk in the door, instead of just complaining to my friends that you're always on my case. And I could tell you that I ask about homework because I'm worried about your future, not because I want to annoy you. Jake looked intrigued. So, like, you'd both just say what you actually mean? It's harder than it sounds, I said. Sometimes what I actually mean is that I'm scared you're going to struggle in life if you don't develop good habits now. But that sounds dramatic when you just forgot one assignment. But maybe if I knew you were scared instead of thinking you were just nagging, I'd react differently, Marcus said. Connor leaned forward. This is like therapy or something. Therapy where we're all the therapists, Tyler added. I looked at Marcus, seeing something in his expression I hadn't noticed before. Not defiance or frustration, but genuine interest in solving this problem between us. You really think we could do that? Be more direct with each other? I think we could try, Marcus said. But it means you can't get upset when I tell you something you don't want to hear. And it means you can't be cruel when you tell me those things. Deal. Jake grinned. This is actually pretty cool. Like, you guys are figuring it out. But even as I felt hopeful about this new understanding with Marcus, a nagging worry crept in. We were talking about changing how we communicated, but I still didn't know what other conversations I'd missed, what other assumptions I'd made about our relationship that might be wrong. Marcus, I said carefully, is there other stuff? Other things you've been afraid to tell me directly? The look that passed between Marcus and his friends told me the answer before he even opened his mouth. The silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken truths. I watched Marcus glance at Connor, then Tyler, then Jake, as if seeking permission or courage from each of them in turn. The afternoon light filtering through the kitchen window seemed to dim, casting longer shadows across the table where we all sat. There's some stuff, Marcus finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. But I don't know if you really want to hear it. My stomach clenched, but I forced myself to nod. If we're going to try this honesty thing, then yes, I want to hear it. Connor shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Maybe we should go, he said to Tyler and Jake. This feels like family stuff now. No, I said quickly, surprising myself. Stay. You three have been part of this conversation from the beginning, and honestly, you might help us both stay honest instead of falling back into our old patterns. Jake raised his eyebrows. You sure? Because Marcus has some thoughts about your cooking. Jake? Marcus warned, but I caught the hint of a smile. My cooking? I laughed, feeling some of the tension ease. Okay, hit me. What's wrong with my cooking? It's not wrong, Marcus said carefully. It's just very beige, Like, aggressively beige. Tyler snorted. He's not wrong. Everything you make is the same color. I make nutritious meals, I protested, but I was still smiling. Chicken, rice, vegetables. What's wrong with that? Nothing's wrong with it, Marcus said. But sometimes I just want something that has flavor, or color, or both. Why didn't you ever say anything? Marcus looked down at his hands. Because you work so hard to take care of me, and complaining about free food seemed ungrateful. But then I'd go to Connor's house, and his mom would make these amazing tacos. Or I'd eat at Tyler's, and his dad would grill these incredible burgers, and I'd come home to plain chicken breast and white rice. The words stung, but not in the way I'd expected. Instead of feeling defensive, I felt sad that Marcus had been silently enduring meals he didn't enjoy, just to spare my feelings. What else? I asked. Marcus looked at his friends again. Connor nodded encouragingly. You ask me about my day every single day, and when I say fine or good, you get this disappointed look. But the truth is, most days are just fine or good. There's not always something interesting to report. I thought about all those conversations, how I'd push for more details, wanting to connect with him, not realizing I was making him feel pressured to perform enthusiasm he didn't feel. And, Marcus continued, gaining momentum now, you always knock on my door and then immediately open it without waiting for me to say come in. The knocking is just a warning that you're about to enter, not actually asking permission. Jake winced. Oh yeah, parents do that. I do that, I admitted. I never thought about it as not respecting your privacy. It's not like I'm doing anything bad in there, Marcus said. But sometimes I just want 2 seconds to finish what I'm doing, or put something away, or just mentally prepare for a conversation. Tyler leaned back in his chair. This is actually really cool. Like, you're both just saying true things instead of being mad about them? But I could see there was more. Marcus kept glancing at Connor, and there was something in Connor's expression that suggested we hadn't reached the deeper issues yet. There's something bigger, isn't there? I asked. Marcus's face changed, becoming more serious. Yeah, there is. The kitchen felt smaller suddenly, the air thicker. I gripped the edge of the table, preparing myself for whatever was coming. I know you worry about me a lot, Marcus said slowly. But sometimes it feels like you don't trust me at all. Like, you assume I'm going to make bad choices or mess up or fail at things. I don't assume that, I started, but Marcus held up his hand. When I wanted to try out for the basketball team, you immediately started talking about how competitive it is and how I shouldn't get my hopes up. When I mentioned wanting to learn guitar, you said we should start with lessons to make sure I was serious about it first. When Connor invited me to go camping with his family, you asked like 15 questions about supervision and safety. Each example hit me like a small punch. I remembered those conversations, remembered thinking I was being practical, protective, reasonable. I was trying to help you think things through, I said weakly. But it doesn't feel like help, Marcus said. It feels like you think I can't handle disappointment or make good decisions or take care of myself. Connor spoke up quietly. My mom does the same thing sometimes. It's like they forget we're not little kids anymore. But you're still kids, I said, then immediately regretted it when I saw Marcus's expression. See? Marcus said. That's exactly what I mean. I'm 15. I'm not a little kid, but I'm also not stupid. I can handle trying out for basketball and not making the team. I can handle learning that guitar is harder than I thought. I can handle going camping without you calling Connor's parents 3 times to check on me. The weight of what he was saying settled on me slowly. I had been treating him like he was fragile, like he needed me to cushion every potential disappointment or failure. But in trying to protect him, I'd been communicating that I didn't believe in his ability to handle his own life. I didn't realize, I said softly. I thought I was being supportive. I know you did, Marcus said, and his voice was gentler now. That's why I never said anything. I know you're trying to help, but sometimes the way you help makes me feel smaller instead of bigger. Jake looked between us with something like admiration. Dude, you guys are actually talking about real stuff. But as I sat there processing everything Marcus had shared, a new worry crept in. If I'd been so wrong about how my support felt to him, what else had I misunderstood? What other ways had I been failing him without knowing it? And more importantly, how many other conversations like the group chat were happening that I knew nothing about? The thing is, I said slowly, looking at each of the boys, I'm realizing I might not know how to be the parent of a teenager. I keep treating you like you're still 8 years old. Marcus shifted in his chair. You don't have to figure it all out right now, Mom. But maybe we could just try talking more? Like, actually talking, not just you telling me what I should think about stuff. I'd like that, I said. But I need you to be honest with me when I'm doing it again. Because apparently I don't notice when I'm being overprotective. Connor looked thoughtful. My mom says she has to catch herself doing that too. Like, she'll start to say something and then stop and ask me what I think instead. That's actually really smart, I admitted. What do you think, Marcus? Could you call me out when I'm doing the thing where I assume you can't handle something? Yeah, but you can't get mad when I do it, Marcus said quickly. I laughed, surprising myself. Fair enough, though I might need a minute to not be defensive about it. Jake had been unusually quiet, but now he spoke up. This is way better than my house. When my parents found out I failed that math test, they just took my phone and grounded me. Nobody asked why I was struggling or anything. What happened with the math? Marcus asked. I just don't get it, and I was too embarrassed to ask for help, Jake said with a shrug. Seemed easier to just fail quietly. I felt that familiar urge to jump in with solutions and advice, but I caught myself. Instead, I waited to see what Marcus would say. That sucks, Marcus said. Math is brutal, but maybe you could ask Connor's dad? He's really good at explaining stuff without making you feel stupid. Would he really help me? Jake asked, looking hopeful. Definitely, Connor said. He helped Marcus with algebra last year. I watched this exchange with something like wonder. They were problem-solving together, supporting each other, being more thoughtful than I'd given them credit for. When had they gotten so mature? You know what I'm realizing? I said. You guys actually have pretty good judgment about things. Better than I thought. Thanks, Marcus said, grinning. I think? I mean it. The way you just handled Jake's situation. The way you've been trying to protect my feelings even when I was driving you crazy. You're more grown up than I've been treating you. The room fell quiet for a moment. Then Marcus said, So, does this mean I can try out for basketball without you giving me a whole speech about managing expectations? I took a deep breath. It means I'll try really hard to just say, good luck, and ask how I can support you. And if you start to do the speech thing? Then you say, Mom, you're doing it again, and I'll stop and ask you what you think instead. Marcus smiled, a real smile this time. Deal. Connor looked between us. This is actually pretty cool. Like, you guys figured out how to talk to each other. We're still figuring it out, I said. But it's a start. Jake nodded approvingly. Way better than just taking phones away. As I looked around at these 3 boys, I realized something important. The group chat hadn't been cruel teenagers mocking their clueless parent. It had been kids trying to make sense of a frustrating situation, supporting their friend through something they all recognized. They'd been more loyal to me than I'd been trusting of them. "One more thing," I said. "I'm sorry I read your private messages. That wasn't okay, even if I learned something important from it." Marcus considered this. "Maybe we could have a rule? Like, if you're worried about something, you ask me directly instead of trying to figure it out by spying? And I'll try to be more honest about stuff that's bothering me instead of just complaining to my friends," he added. "That sounds fair," I said. The afternoon sun was starting to slant through the kitchen windows, and I realized we'd been talking for over an hour. These boys who I'd thought were just goofing around had engaged in one of the most honest conversations I'd had in months. "So," I said, standing up and stretching, "anyone want to help me figure out what's for dinner? And Marcus, I'm asking what you think we should make, not telling you what would be most nutritious." Marcus laughed. "See? You're already getting better at this." As we started pulling things out of the refrigerator, all four of us working together in the kitchen, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Like we were a team. Like I could trust them to be part of the solution instead of just problems I needed to manage. It wasn't going to be perfect. I knew I'd slip back into overprotective mode, and Marcus would probably still complain about me to his friends sometimes. But now we had a way to talk about it. We had a foundation to build on. And maybe that was enough.